The button that selects N or PR on a Brother Ribber is actually a plastic slider and it can break.
All right, we have a friend whose PR and N button suffered catastrophic molecular exasperation when another machine tried to commit suicide on top of it. So we're going to try and help her get in to change this button. And we start by lifting the center button up. Take our screw out. She also wanted to know what to look for when she goes in. And so let me point out, some of these screws are hard to get off. This one's never been off before. But notice the positioning here of your dial. So there's a slot in this, and the slot has to go back in so that this prong goes in the slot, because there's your indicator that shows you what position you're in. So remember, this little slot has to point straight towards this post and the center of this dial. So when you put this back on, see how it rotates around? You can't be the opposite direction or to one side. Just something to look for.
Because then you won't be able to get your stitch size adjusted correctly.
That's right. Your indicator won't be pointing to the real size that you're working with. Now, there you go. That's easy peasy. And you can tell we've never been into this.
Uh-oh, somebody needs a bath.
Yeah, look at all the old grease that's in there. And I'm going to wipe it on this because I didn't bring a cloth with me, but that's good enough. All right, now we're ready to lift this cover. When you're taking the cover off, if you're not sure which ones it is, you can see what I've done. I've loosened this one, this one, this one, and this one, and now my cover is floating. I'm moving the cover, and you can see the screws moving. So we know these are the right ones.
I think what Jack is trying to say is don't just remove things willy-nilly all the way out, because then you have the trouble of putting it back. And sometimes it's not that easy.
That's right. And one of the things that our friend has asked us is about the sproing factor. If you pull the wrong screw out and there's a spring under that screw or around that screw, then that spring releases. And if you really don't know what the inside of these are like, then there you are with a loose spring and you have no idea where it went. We cover that in a lot of different videos, so keep watching.
Yeah, but what she really said, is there anything to be really careful of? I don't want to do damage on the way in to fix existing damage.
All right, now this is one of the things that I do. I'm letting it rest on the back edge of the cover. I'm holding the front edge of the cover up to the carriage because, I'll show you in a minute, those levers will flip out when you lift the cover. And you have to know where they're at.
So holding the cover on is keeping the levers from running away.
Right. Now both hands on the cover. All right, this is one of the situations where it'll lift off, but you heard the spring. There's a notch for the spring here and a notch for the spring here. Sometimes one position will work better than the other position. This time it just came right off. But again, this is a cam path for this rider right here. So when you go to put it back on, see the position of this rider compared to this post.
I'm going to point from this side just in case that wasn't perfectly clear.
And you moved it. But you can see it'll float. So try to remember the position it's in, because it has to match up to this track when this goes back on.
So if you're having trouble getting this back on, that's probably why.
Yes. All right, here we go, lifting up, and watch both of those flip down.
The PR and N plastic, and that's the piece she'll be replacing.
Right, there you go. I always hold them, thumbs, a little pressure towards the finger so that I can turn it over, and there they are.
From her photo, I'm going to guess that there will be bits of plastic in here somewhere.
Yeah, very likely.
If
this
they didn't
broke
fall
off.
out on the floor already,
right,
they may be inside, and we may want to look around and use tweezers to pick them out.
But now be aware that this post goes in this hole. Let me take one out.
Okay.
What I've done is I'm holding the cover in place. This is how it was when we took it off. Both of these levers were in the in normal position. Now I'm going to move the lever to PR. Ooh, look, this is what it's actuating right there. And in the middle, you can see it's the leading edge of this plastic slide that is pulling the spring-loaded tang on this lever. See, now I'm going to move the lever out of the way so you can see this is the part of the plastic.
Now we're really up close, and Jack is doing the same thing.
I'm moving the tang that controls this lever, and now I'm going to move it again with the button.
And we can see the bottom of that slide that attaches to the button.
Right. So now we're going to go back to the top side.
You're good.
Now we're going to lift the cover by lifting the in PR button on either side to let us see the position that this is supposed to be in when we put it on. This is what we were seeing on the underside, this piece of this slide pulling this. And don't look at the fuzz, we'll take care of that later.
In our defense, this was an estate sale machine.
Right.
So this is not my dirt, is what I'm trying to tell you.
That's right, this is imported dirt. Now let me show you while we're in here, the lever for 1 and 2. You see what it's doing. Now this spring will pop off. Whichever position it's in, the spring is out of tension in that position. But you see this end is loose. This end is just sitting on a post. Another reason why if you pulled that screw out, this would be loose inside. So that's why we go over that. But there's your 1 and 2 position. You see what it's doing. But be careful that it's not, this spring stays in place, and it could have popped off from impact.
So it might be loose inside a machine that's had this happen.
It's just sitting there. But back to what we want to do, if you'll notice, this is the one that broke for her. When you turn it loose,
it just drops down.
It hangs down.
Touching it.
And this is how you get it out. Into the slot, down, and on the underside, it's got a position that it locks into because of this angular clip piece right there goes right inside of this for its 2 positions. That's one position, that's one position. So
the slot slide along the mini rails.
Right. This is controlling it, and the fact that it's inside of this piece of casing, which I would look at this and make sure there's no cracks in this molded piece of the casing.
By the way, replacement covers are available because we've replaced them before. Right. So in case there's something really bad wrong in here that you couldn't see from the outside, the carriage is not ruined. It can be replaced.
Right, and this is a spot where the 2-part epoxy will work, the plumbing putty will work.
Long as you make sure you stay out of the way of the mechanism.
Right, but you see you got all kinds of
You got a little bit of room, yeah.
But I want you to see this piece flexes, and that's what clicks it into place when it's moving. There it goes.
This one's wiggling all around.
Well, it does that.
Yep, they do wiggle and they fall.
Right, but there it is. The spring is moving along the slide, there's position 1, there's position 2. So when you go to put it back on, it needs to be in the in position, and as long as it's upside down, not a problem. But when you turn it right side up, be sure you're lifting by these ends position, and then it'll slip right down into where it's supposed to be, like so.
And it's working.
And it's working.
I would like to make a suggestion.
Yes.
Since we've got this apart, I'd like to clean it. So could you put this back on just enough to show reassembling the dial? That's something that concerns everybody, but don't screw everything back down because I want to come back in and clean.
Okay, yes. So here we are. I'm holding this in position. I'm going to set it down on there. Now we're good. Everything will stay put.
And normally we would screw this on before resettling the dial parts.
Right. But again, what we have to do is reach in and flex this slightly. Like so.
And would you describe that as a flat spring?
Yes.
And it's quite strong.
It is. It does not like to behave itself. There you go. We just slipped past it. Now, are we on there? That's the final position. If you'll notice, there's 2 of those V springs. One is for riding the stitch dial. One is for the 2 positions of this. But if we're not in that cam path right there with that little floating rider that we showed you, it's not going to work. Now, see? Now we're back again.
It makes quite a definite clunk.
Right, and sometimes you can flex this just a little to let it out. But this is the lower spring in.
So back we go.
Right.
In real life, having already reassembled it with screws.
Whoa.
I know, this is why I don't want to put it back together.
Yeah.
There's just too much.
It needs help.
It's been working. These are the most forgiving machines. It's worked fine.
Right.
But it's clear that this wouldn't be a responsible thing.
And you did notice I kept going back and forth, wiggling this dial and putting a little downward pressure until I got it seated properly. Now, same thing if on this one. On some of them, there's an extra wide spot to put the dial on. And again, here's your cam path. Here's your follower. You got to make sure that that follower, see, it'll float. You look, you want it to go in right there. So you kind of look at this distance and set that so it goes on. And did we do it?
I don't think so.
Right now we're trying to get past that spring finger.
There it went.
There it went.
Is this one of the ones that needs to be in the 10 position to go on?
No, no, it does not. And that's why I was going to say is you keep going back and forth until you flex that spring just enough to let it seat down. But you notice when it's seated, the post is slightly higher than the dial edge.
So if it's not, you're not down enough.
That's right.
Let's see if we can make the trip all the way around from 1 to 10. Actually, it's 0 to 10.
Right.
And yeah, we can go past 0 and past 10, so it looks good.
All right. I always like to put them on in 5 position. And notice there's a little tab in the 5 position. So this goes on. We know that we started in the 5 position. So we start our screw in. We get down till it's snug. And notice that in the 5 position, the notch in this piece matches the protuberance in that piece to let you know you're in the right spot when they exactly mirror one another. So you hold it with a finger
And tighten your screw
up. Now, here's our indicator. We know we're in the 5 position, and your button's in place.
Voila.
4, 5, 6. See, now we know that we're actually dealing with the real position of the dial. If we were to turn it over, and I will try to hold the cover, and we can watch. See,
so the length of the stitch, the needle path is being altered. The path
is getting longer. Now as these 2 silver slides come into their slots, the path is getting shorter. So we know that we're on the post like we're supposed to, and it's following the cam path for the dial end. And then we have our 4 screws, and you're back in business. We saw how to get this out, how to put it back in, to be in the end position so that it gets its lever. And let's try it and see. Yep, there it is. It's moving its lever correctly.
So you're good to go.
Yes, and you're good to clean up.
Yes, I am.